Hello, BookTube. As you can tell, a bit of a day has passed since my library tour this morning. Went out and about, did some errands, noticed that Boston is up to its eyeballs in new students, and came back to gone on holiday level of mail. Even though I'm not on holiday anymore, I don't know what's going on here. I guess the publishing industry is still thinking that I'm away. I have a pile of mail here to go through with you, so I thought we'd do that. It ends in 3 boxes that go up in size, which is very nice. But we'll leave those for last. We'll do the ordinary packages first. I will show up in fiber content, from ordinary manila envelopes to cardboard manila envelopes and cardboard pressed things, all the way to boxes. And I've got the bean here. Are you going to jump for that, huh? What is that, baby? Ooh. Ooh. Let's see. There she is on the ground there, chewing on her first envelope. One of you pointed out that I may be so bad at math that I got her age wrong. It turns out she's 2, not 3. There's just no relief in the world if you don't know math. Okay, all right. This first one is something we've seen already. This will be a September book, I'm sure. Yep, this is a September book. This is a history of the word by Daniel Schwartz, ghetto. Only, I read the advanced copy that I got, and of course it's more than a history of a word. This is not an etymology exercise. Tracing the curious path of this loaded word from its first use in the 16th century Venice to the present turns out to be more than an adventure in linguistics, and that's exactly what this is. It's kind of a keyhole history in a way. I mean, these little histories that I always talk about, these little narrative histories that they have no sweep to them. They're just a very fine focus. Opium, the color purple, the word ghetto, that sort of thing. I don't object to them on principle. They usually don't please me much. This one did. Usually they seem a little unadventurous to me. Ooh, what's that? Huh? You can't have the book, Frida. You can have the bag. We have an old agreement here. Oh, my. Oh, goodness. All right, this is from Harvard as well. I don't think I ever got this as an advanced copy. This is also a September book, of course. This is Chris Sager's The United States versus Apple, Competition in America. Let's see here. Library Journal gave it a starred review. Renowned antitrust expert Chris Sagers uses one of the most followed antitrust cases of recent times, United States versus Apple, to reveal an often missed truth. What Americans most fear is competition itself. In 2012, the Department of Justice accused Apple and 5 book publishers of conspiring to fix ebook prices. The evidence overwhelmingly showed an unadorned price-fixing conspiracy that cost consumers hundreds of millions of dollars. Yet before, during, and after the trial, millions of Americans sided with the defendants. Pundits on the left and right condemned the government for its decision to sue, decrying Amazon's market share, railing against a new high-tech economy, and rallying to defend beloved authors and publishers. For many, Amazon was the one that should have been put on trial. But why? One fact remained unrecognized and unreckoned with. In practice, Americans have long been ambivalent about competition. And by that, I think the author probably means competition in the marketplace. Wow. Okay. So is this going to be about that? I was just assuming it would be about Apple's retail practices, but is this going to be about... Oh, it is. This is going to be mostly about that ebook flap, which I was watching closely when it was happening. Wow, okay, I did not know that. And I don't remember that I got an advance copy of this. Great, okay, well that's a September book as well. In my nightmare, all of these are September books. Just my September shelf. It's a mess, first of all. It's overloaded with books, but it's also a mess because I haven't dealt with it since I came back. I've dealt with precious little since I came back. I'm undergoing the thing I often joshed people about, which is to stay in vacation mindset even after you get back and the real world starts to tug at your elbow. I have done that, and so I have not taken care of anything I really need to. Okay, so what is this? Okay, this comes out in November, I think probably as a paperback original. This is by John Freeman, and it is called Dictionary of the Undoing. Editor, critic, and poet John Freeman is perhaps the ultimate good literary citizen. all in capitals. Good literary citizen. A one-time president of the National Book Critics Circle, the former editor of Granta, and now executive editor of Literary Hub, and an editor in his own eponymously named and beautifully published literary annual, Freeman has been advocating for great literature and helping other writers hone their work throughout his prolific career. Ditto. So, we're comrades in arms. And that's not even to mention Freeman's own writing, his poetry published with Copper Canyon Press, or his How to Read a Novelist, a collection of his perceptive author profiles published by Farrar, Straus & Giroux, the publishers of this book, in 2013. On the face of it, Freeman's new book, a suite of poetic, incisive essays about our political present, may come as something of a surprise, but it shouldn't. In addition to all of the above, Freeman has edited 2 urgent collections of writing about economic inequality in recent years. Not that you would have known that I made a mistake anyway, because recent years have not shown any economic equality anywhere in the world. We're in a new Gilded Age. And throughout his career, his work has not only been about bolstering literary culture, but about creating a principled community around it. Huh. Okay, so are these the current political climate? What does that mean? I wonder if the essays are titled. Is this a Trump book? Basically, is this a Trump book? So I don't know. Okay. Okay, these aren't essays. These are just all right. Well, whatever. This is due in mid-November, so I will be getting a hold of it. I will put it slightly on hold because the finished copies of stuff for September. I am up to my eyeballs in September. September has suddenly blossomed into this monstrous month, and October looks to be even worse. So I'm now nose to the grindstone in reading. Although last night was not a good example. Last night was not a good example of that. I told myself yesterday when the day's writing was over, there wasn't much. Yesterday was the day I came back, so there wasn't much in the day's writing. But when the day's writing was over, I told myself, all right, we're about to pack it in, move into the little book room, and read for the rest of the night. And what you're going to do is just take in a stack of September books and read them. And I did some of that, but I didn't do all of that. Because one of the things I got in the recent days was the Penguin trade paperback, the Penguin Classic of Anna Karenina. And I started reading it. I read the introduction again. I started reading the book again. Anyway, I will get back in the swing of things. I will definitely do that. So what is this next one? Oh, okay. All right, this is another one that I've read. This is a September book, I'm sure. Yes, it's a September book. This is a finished copy of Ruth Ashby's The Great American Documents, Volume 2. This one goes from 1831 to 1900, so it encompasses the American Civil War and Reconstruction. And it's a graphic novel. It's illustrated by Ernie Colon, who a lot of you comic books fans from about 40 years ago will know as Ernie Chan. He worked under the name Ernie Chan as an inker and embellisher for Marvel Comics. And here he embraces a kind of New York Times political cartoon sensibility, slightly exaggerated facial features, slightly exaggerated angles of motion that works really well. It works really well. This is something that you could hand to a student, a high school student, that would be the perfect thing for getting into the nitty-gritty, the nuts and bolts of how what is, after all, the central contention of this book and its predecessor, which is that America is a country formed by documents. So it's not a bad approach to take, to go through the great documents. I recommend it under those circumstances. Let's see what this next one is. The bean has settled down. It is hot today. She has settled down. Oh. Okay. I don't know if we saw this. Did we see this? This is obviously going to be a September book. Yes, this is a September book. This is The Future of Another Timeline by Annalee Newitz. She is the founding editor of IO9. And this is a story of time travel, murder, and the lengths we'll go to protect the ones we love. And the pub sheet refers to it as a feminist time travel thriller about women, science, and punk rock that is already earning glowing early praise. Okay. I don't really know what that means. It's just a lot of events coming up. Wow, including one at the Harvard Bookstore. Fantastic. I don't know what that means. I never know what that means anymore. If you had talked to me 40 years ago, 30 years ago, when I was writing essays and arguing against the ingrained sexism of society all around us, when I was infuriated by the sexism, for instance, on network TV, but when I also wrote essays and damning reviews about the ordinary baked-in sexism in normal, everyday American fiction 40 years ago, it just incensed me, because I had all of the smartest literary figures that I had known were all women. Almost all of the greatest literary works I had read were by women. It just drove me nuts that this sort of thing. I mean, I mentioned, I think the other day when I was in Vermont, Mark and I had a live stream. And I think at one point in that live stream, I mentioned the Gore novels, a long science fiction series, entirely predicated on an alternate world in which women are treated as slaves and currency. And each book they were undisguised pornography. They just had Boris Vallejo covers. And they were unabashedly in the science fiction section of every bookstore. It drove me nuts. It drove me nuts. In fact, I had a long discussion with a bookstore owner at the time in where was it? Iowa somewhere? Maybe? Des Moines? Or maybe Austin, Texas? I'd gotten to know a bookstore proprietor, and I was friendly. We were friendly enough to talk, and it was a time when adults could disagree and still be friends, which doesn't exist anymore. You all caught a glimpse of that during those long videos when I was up in Vermont and during that live stream. Mark and I are from that time when two adults could disagree to knock down drag-out lengths and still gorge themselves on potato pancakes and wine and be friends. It was once upon a time. It wasn't a zero-sum world that we lived in. But I used to talk to that proprietor. I used to say, I'm not asking you to get rid of anything that's in your store, and God knows I don't want you to get rid of anything that sells, because every bookstore needs its sales. But as a conversation between the two of us, how would you feel if you were the kind of person, and in this case the gender, that could walk into a bookstore and see that for sale? How would you feel about that? You would not feel welcome, even if the proprietor did welcome you. He's selling something that advocates, as a fictional escape, your brutal victimization. Anyway, the reason for that tangent is because back then I would have known what was being referred to if a novel's pub sheet described it as, what was that again? A feminist time travel thriller. I would have known what that meant. I had many conversations with Ursula Le Guin about what that meant. Nowadays, in 2019, I have absolutely no idea. None whatsoever. There's a picture of Annalee Newitz. She's very young. She has ostentatious horn-rimmed glasses that she obviously medically does not need. She has brightly dyed hair, and the sides of her head are shaved. That is shorthand. That has become, in 2019, shorthand for a kind of person, what I would call an ideologue who only calls himself a feminist, whose main expression of what they call feminist is to hate men. So, and I've stumbled into books that where the pub sheet described them as a feminist tract, a feminist collective of essays, a feminist novel, and I stumble into them with the best of intentions because I remember a time when that word was used very differently than it is today, and I end up getting to page 35 or 40 and realizing that this is a Gore novel, except now it's me who is hated and brutalized all throughout the book. And I don't know, maybe this will be different. I certainly hope that it is. It's a September book, so I can find out right away. But the main, that happens all the time in what passes for 21st century feminism, is what it means is just hate men. Just make a sweeping declaration on your BookTube channel, for instance. Men can't write. Or something nonsensical like that. And it underscores a point that I have made and will make on ranty live streams. It doesn't belong in this BookTube video, that's for sure. But a point that I've made in ranty conversations before is that one of the things that identifies zillennials, the people who are very young right now, who are entering adulthood right now in 2019, one of the things that identifies them is that they fundamentally do not understand an axiom that goes back 7,000 years, which is that two wrongs don't make a right. That you are not doing any good in the world to take the wrong that was done to some group, some gender, whatever, and do it now to the people whose group did it then. First of all, you're not dealing with the same people. And second, two wrongs don't make a right. There's no such thing as restorative bigotry. There's no such thing as restorative prejudice. all of which might be a rant without a home. It might not have anything to do with this book. I got my hackles up now because I saw that term, feminist time travel novel. When I see that adjective used now, I get tense because I've walked into books where I've picked it up. Happened in 2016, several times in 2017. Where I picked a book up and it said, "Here's a collection of feminist essays from an author you'll all recognize," or "Here's a feminist novel," and my first reaction is, "Oh, great, fantastic!" And then I get into it and I realize, no, this isn't a feminist anything. This is just sexism. It's just the other. It's just the sexist shoe is on the other foot, but that doesn't make it any better. So we shall see. We shall see. I shouldn't hang that rant on this book, this poor little book, because the future of Another Timeline might be just fine. Probably is just fine. IO9 is certainly a smart website, so just take, as usual, take that and everything else with a grain of salt here. The key here with all these mail hauls, the keys with all of my literary rants of any kind is, let's find out together. We can talk first impressions all we like, but then let's settle down and find out together what these things actually are. The rants are a little bit of fun, as long as you understand that it's not the finished picture. But anyway, we're going to move on now to a big cardboard thing here. And let's hope for your sake that it doesn't have feminist anywhere in the title or anything, or the manosphere. It's just as bad on the other side. Let's see. Oh my. Okay. All right. These books are trying to get me to rant. I'm not going to do it, though. This is also a September book. These are all going to be September books. This is by George Weigel, and it's The Irony of Modern Catholic History. The subtitle is How the Church Rediscovered Itself and Challenged the Modern World to Reform. I don't think we got an advanced copy of this either, did we? For much of the 19th century, both secular and Catholic leaders assumed that the Church and the modern world were locked in a battle to the death. According to the conventional telling of this story, modernity was the sole driver of historical action, and the Church being simply a reactive and even reactionary force against the modern project. But, as acclaimed Catholic scholar George Weigel notes, today the Church is far more important than it was 150 years ago when Pope Pius IX withdrew into the Vatican, forced to surrender the Italian lands the popes had ruled for centuries. Pope Pius IX was the subject of a very entertaining book, The Pope Who Would Be King, what was it, a couple of years ago, 1 year ago? I wrote a review of it. If I remember again, I will leave a link to it down below, but that was a terrific book. Although it didn't go far enough. It didn't treat with Pius IX's whole life the way it should have. And we don't. One of the things I noticed when I was reading that book and when I was thinking about that review is how few papal biographies we have anymore. Great papal biographies of key figures. I mean, Pius IX was one. Of course, you know who I'm going to mention in addition to him, and that's Pope John the 22nd. Pope John the 23rd. We had some giant popes. Pope John the 23rd, well, anyway, here, let's... the author casts the history of the past 2 centuries, he recasts it in order to argue that in confronting modernity, the Catholic Church became more coherent, less defensive, and more evangelical, committed to converting the modern world rather than to condemning it. Furthermore, in yet another irony, the Church found itself playing an important role in reshaping the modern project, helping the West to aspire to a more humane future. Okay. In this wonderfully engaging account, the author introduces readers to a remarkable cast of churchmen, intellectuals, and public figures who drove both Catholicism and modernity forward. While the Catholic Church was forced into a defensive position in the decades after the French Revolution, the period still saw remarkable missionary zeal in the work of such figures. Oh, okay. So, but how far forward does this go? I mean, the Catholic Church is currently in a defensive position of a massive kind. One scandal after another. The sex scandals of the Catholic Church are an infamy to outlast the Church itself. Not just the things that happen, but the Church's full awareness of them. Cardinal Bernard Law here in Boston, his full awareness of what he was doing. I have had knockdown, drag out, perfectly verifiable, factual reporting proof of what this priest did to young boys in his parish. He is an absolute soulless criminal, a predator. And if he'd been anywhere else, in any other profession, he'd be in jail for the rest of his life and would be, of course, as we know from American jail culture, almost certainly murdered there. But since he's a priest in my diocese, well, I'm going to take him out of that church, and I'm going to move him to another parish. I'm not going to tell them anything about why I moved him, and I'm going to make sure that they don't learn. And I'm also not going to tell them not to have him work with kids. I'm just going to hope that he gets better. When sometimes Cardinal Bernard Law, but also many other Catholic cardinals, did that repeatedly. So they knew these men weren't healing spontaneously on their own of these horrific, monstrous urges of theirs, and they did it anyway. They just inflicted them on a totally unknowing new community anyway. And sure enough, they would get there, they would unpack their bags, and immediately they would go to the church council and say, you know what we really need? An outdoor retreat. Just me and the boys. Or anything like that. And the people in the parish would say, boy, you know, this new father, he's got a lot of great ideas. It's wonderful. He's really got an involved approach to the boys. It's fantastic. They had no idea that they should distrust that scandal. I don't know how well it's going to sit with a book about the Catholic Church marching forward hand in hand with society in the modern project. Good Lord. Well, we shall see. I will find out, because once again, these are September books, so I'm going to dive right into them. I hope. I hope that I'm not going to read cheesy science fiction all night long. Let's see. We're now on to boxes. Let's hope for nice, serene boxes, so we're not continuing to rant. Hello, Bean. Well, you're not bothering with these things. Do you want cardboard? No. You see, you're just looking at it. No. Tweet. She's having trouble adapting too. We're back now, but she has to adapt. Okay. As I thought, this is okay. This is the second book in 3 or 4 months that I've got with the same title. This is Our Land. This land is our land. The Struggle for a New Commonwealth. This is by Jedediah Purdy. I don't think I got an advance copy of this. This will be a September book. That's odd. Suketu Mehta's book was also called This Land is Our Land, I guess. Or that's the time we live in. Today we are at a turning point as we face ecological and political crises that are rooted in conflict over the land itself. But these problems can be solved if we draw on elements of our tradition that move us toward a new commonwealth, a community founded on a well-being of all people and the natural world. In this brief, timely, and hopeful book, Jedediah Purdy, one of our finest writers and leading environmental thinkers, explores how we might begin to heal our fractured and contentious landscape with the land and with each other. And he ranges his focus from Appalachia to the Carolinas to the public lands out west. Okay, why do I know Jedediah Purdy? I know that name. He's a professor of law at Columbia Law School. His previous books include After Nature. Oh, okay, I read After Nature. A Tolerable Anarchy, Being America, and Four Common Things. And he lives in New York City. I read After Nature. I think I reviewed it too. If I reviewed it, I will again try to remember to leave a review. This is just brutal. In addition to all the rants, this is just brutal. These books are all September. They are all September things that I haven't read. This is just almost more than one bookworm can do. Anyway, let's move on. We're almost done. 2 more big boxes, nice and heavy. Finished copies, almost certainly both of them. The Bean at the ready. We're at the ready. Are you gonna jump? No. Your fans want to see you, Frida. No, you don't. All right. Okay. This next one is a finished copy of something I think we saw. This is a September book. Wow, it's a big thing. Oh my. Oh boy. Okay, it's fully illustrated. Fantastic. All right, this is History of Brooklyn. And it is just full of illustrations. There's not like one central island of illustrations in the middle. Instead, the whole thing is full of them. Fantastic. Pretty. The finished copy is actually prettier than I thought it would be. This is by Thomas Campanella. Baby. I knew she was going to start doing that. Baby. Well, it doesn't matter, because we're almost done anyway, and you already know what this is. It's a new history of Brooklyn. From the teddy bear to the transcontinental flight, Brooklyn has launched countless dreams in many languages. And in recent decades, it has become an internationally recognized brand, both celebrated and scorned as one of the hippest destinations in the world. And that is certainly true. Every writer has to live in Brooklyn. Every writer of a certain stripe has to live in Brooklyn. If they think that literature was a wasteland with tumbleweeds rolling all through it until they showed up and graduated from whatever MFA their parents paid for and then went to Yaddo for a season and then came back to save literature, if they think that, then they live in Brooklyn. And they intentionally don't bath. They intentionally don't bathe. And they all have girlfriends, and yet they are open and avowed sexist. It's just sort of cool. It's just the way I am. That's all. They call their girlfriends my girl. They call women chicks. It's all anachronistic. It's all put on. It's all artificial behavior because hipsters are only artificial. That's the only thing that they know how to do. They are terrified of stopping all that crap and just looking in at who they are. They will not do that. Absolutely will not do that. And these people get a book deal, from St. Martin's or Random House or whatever, and they move to Brooklyn so they can be among their own kind. I guess. But this is you can tell from the pictures that this will be about Brooklyn in all of its ages and eras. So I won't have to put up with the massive influx of pretentious 20-something writers until the very end of the book. Okay, great. And then the last one. We'll do the last one here. It's a much bigger box, but it's lighter than the Brooklyn one. So this could be multiple books, or maybe the finished copy of something that's fairly small. Well, baby, I know. Oh, she's so excited. But you didn't do anything with the last one. You were excited about the last one, but you didn't do anything with it. No? Oh, fantastic. Oh, my. Okay. Oh, my. Okay, this is, I have mentioned, Harvard University Press that has the Loeb Classical Library series. They've had it for a century. These little hardcover volumes that are going strong. It's a great, great series where you get the Latin or the Greek on one side and an English translation on the other. And these are, the Loeb started out just catering to the normal titans of classical literature. So you had Homer and Horace and Plato and whatnot. And as a result of that, the translations often had bad press because those are authors who are translated by authors, by bigger name authors without the original language for much bigger, popular publishers. It used to be an event when there was a new Iliad translation. And because of that, the translations on facing pages in the Loeb volumes were often considered, looked down upon. They were often considered to be sort of workmanlike trots, but of no literary value and no translation value. But then the Loeb library kept expanding, so that often you were getting Loeb volumes with facing English translations of things that had almost never been translated in English before, and certainly not as available as the Loebs. And the Loebs were nice, durable little hardcovers, so it was nice to have a whole shelf of them, and you could use them for your whole life. And you could tell that because at good used bookstores, you'll find 100-year-old Loebs that are still perfectly usable. And Harvard branched out from the Loeb Classical Library series and has done other translation series along the same lines. The original on one side, the English translation on the other. But they've done Dumbarton Oaks. They've done which is a medieval literature done in the Loeb Classical Library series style, and they've also done the E. Tati Library, which is what these two are. These books from this last box is E. Tati, and that is literature of the Italian Renaissance, only not just a translation of Machiavelli's The Prince. Instead, the E. Tati Library has an enormous track record of bringing to English Italian Renaissance works for the first time. It's incredible. It's just incredible. So for me, I almost enjoy them more than the Loebs. That feels like heresy, but I almost do. And here we have two of the latest ones. I will read about them to you. So we have The Lives of the Milanese Tyrants. They all look like this. They're all in this powder blue. And The Virtues and Vices of Speech. So let me tell you about these, because I'd be willing to bet. I haven't looked at these. I didn't know these in the catalog, but I'd be willing to bet that at least one of these is the first translation into English, which is a big deal. So The Lives of the Milanese Tyrants is by an author named Candido de Sembrillo. The Lives of the Milanese Tyrants brings together two biographies by the most important Milanese humanist of the 15th century. Pier Candido de Cimbrio, who lived from 1399 to 1477, served as secretary and envoy to the bizarre and powerful Filippo Maria Visconti, Duke of Milan. As a member of the Duke's inner circle, de Cimbrio was in a privileged position to write what historians agree is a unique masterpiece of Renaissance biography based on decades of direct experience. Also included in this volume is a work of homage to Visconti's successor, de Cimbrio's flattering account of the deeds and of the most successful mercenary captains of the Renaissance, Francesco Sforza, who secured for himself and his heirs the disputed position of Duke of Milan through guile, force, and willpower. Both works are translated into English here for the first time, from new Latin texts prepared specifically for this edition. That is incredible. That is incredible. As more and more Renaissance scholars, especially minted in America, remain steadfastly monoglot, where universities that are bilking $35,000 out of these students have decided to contour degrees that don't require you to learn Latin or Renaissance Italian or anything like that. And these books are going to be seminal to that. And not only that, not only in the academic sense, but these are bringing these authors to a general readership in America and the UK that doesn't read anything but English. That's just amazing. And they always come with great introductions, too. So let's do the second one, The Virtues and Vices of Speech. This is by Giovanni Pontano, who took the writing name Gioviano. So they just blurred them all together on the title here. Giovanni Pontano, who adopted the academic sobriquet Gioviano, was prime minister to several kings of Naples and the most important Neapolitan humanist of the Quattrocento. Best known today as a Latin poet, he also composed dialogues depicting the intellectual life of the Humanist Academy of which he was the head, and late in life a number of moral essays that became his most popular prose works. The De Sermone, on speech, translated into English here for the first time, aims to provide a moral anatomy following the Aristotelian principles of various aspects of speech such as truthfulness and deception, flattery, gossip, loquacity, calumny, mercantile bargaining, irony, wit, ridicule. In each type of speech, Pontano tries to identify what could count as the virtuous mean, that which identifies the speaker as a person of education, taste, and moral probity. Okay. All right, so these are both September books. And they are, let me show you. See, they have the Latin on one side and the English on the other. That's what they look like. They have, I can't sing their praises highly enough. They have great bindings, great introductions, fantastic notes, and they are always very scrupulous in terms of their scholarship. So that is it. that is our mail. It didn't turn out to be all that short, but it was a huge pile that I came back to today. So we have a Steve pile to make, and then we'll knock it off. So we have a New History of Brooklyn. Let's see what we got here. We have the irony of modern Catholic history. Let's see. United States versus Apple. Ghetto. A history of a word. That turns out to be more than that. We have these two, the latest two volumes in the Itati Library series. We have The Future of Another Timeline. I'm the founding editor of IO9. We have Great American Documents, Volume 2. An illustrated guide to the documents that shaped American society. We have This Land is Our Land by Jedediah Purdy, which apparently is going to strike a hopeful note. That's kind of interesting right there. And Dictionary of the Undoing by John Freeman, a collection of little nonfiction skits and sketches that we'll have to see. You'll have to see what that amounts to. So there you go. That is a mail haul. Slightly bigger than I was expecting, but these are the days. So I'll wrap this up for now, so I'm not back to 5 5-hour videos a day, but I'll be back. Thank you, Book 2.